If you're inside Russia, the invasion of Ukraine looks very different to you than it does to the rest of the world. Vladimir Putin's government has shut down many social media networks and independent media outlets. Not much remains besides Russian state television. Some reporters have quit, saying the government's control of media has gotten even worse since the start of the war.
И мы дошли до того, что в телевизоре, в новостях, мы видим историю только одного человека или группы людей, которых его окружают. Мы видим только власть.
So, what is it that most Russians are actually seeing about the war being waged in their name? Disinformation on Russian state TV has focused on three elements. 1. Lies that undermine Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. 2. Nationalist messaging justifying Russian military actions. And 3. A complete blackout of any Russian dissent against the war. So, while Western media is very eager to portray the Ukrainian president as a hero, his portrayal on Russian state television is, well, different.
На пресс-конференции перед журналистами он предстал в таком непотребном виде, что у всех возник лишь один вопрос: под алкоголем глава Украины или под сильно действующими наркотиками?
Yep, that newscaster really accused Zelensky of being under the influence. But why?
Mr. Zelensky has charisma. He knows how to talk with people, how to communicate with people. A leader staying in the capital of the country in the time of the war is very powerful, especially knowing that this is really dangerous.
To that end, Russian state TV has tried to convince its viewers that Zelensky might have actually fled Ukraine.
Самому ему приходится все время доказывать, что не сбежал, но все равно сомневаются. Вот Зеленский идет, и на стене картина, а когда садится, она исчезает, рама пустая.
Now, this clip might actually seem damning at first, but if you play it back, it's clear that the picture on the wall that supposedly disappeared is actually just cropped out. The point, however, is to place doubt in viewers' minds when they watch any clip of Zelensky. Disinformation like this has an easier time spreading because of something called motivated reasoning. That's when bias leads someone to subconsciously come to a conclusion that supports how they already feel.
We are trying to explain the events based on our interests in a way.
Russian state media leans on motivated reasoning to sell the war in Ukraine by broadcasting nationalist messaging to its audience.
A person chooses not to expose themselves to information that goes against their beliefs. They don't want to believe it. And so even if they see things which contradict their picture of the world, they block themselves from it.
Basically, Russians who already support the war tune into state television so they can watch narratives that justify the war, along with Russian military actions that include attacks on civilian targets.
Украинские войска не изменяют своей излюбленной тактики и продолжают размещать огневые позиции поближе к жилым домам и социальным объектам, больницам, садикам, школам.
This is why one of the major justifications that Putin offered for the war was denazification, based on the accusation that Ukraine is overrun with Nazis. You see, a huge part of the national identity of ex-Soviet countries like Russia is their role in defeating Nazi Germany in World War II. Millions of Russians and Ukrainians, who were also part of the Soviet Union, died during that war. So when Putin portrays this war as an anti-Nazi operation, it helps build support among Russian civilians and soldiers. While there are neo-Nazi militias like the Azov Battalion fighting alongside Ukraine's armed forces, their numbers are quite small. Still, this hasn't stopped Putin from exploiting their existence to justify Russia's invasion.
Russian soldiers also realize that they're hurting civilians. They need to show that they are not fighting with the people, which they do. They need to show that they're fighting with these Nazis, which are just using people as the shield, which is not true.
Now, Russians who are looking for alternatives to state media have had their options limited by massive censorship. The country has blocked Facebook and Instagram, and even introduced a new law against spreading, quote, fake news. Journalists who refer to the war in Ukraine as a war and not a special military operation could find themselves in violation of this new law, which carries the risk of 15 years in prison. As a result, independent outlets have been forced to choose between self-censoring or shutting down.
I want to emphasize when we talk about this that there's quite some protest in Russia right now. And these people are risking a lot. These are very brave people. Over 40 cities we have seen protests, with 15,000 people arrested.
These protests are not being seen on state media at all, with some rare exceptions like this.
Союзного государства, а на совещании в правительстве обсуждали, как сохранить.
This is Marina Ovsyannikova, who actually worked as a journalist for Russian state TV's Channel 1 until she stormed live television with an anti-war message. After her protest, a Russian court fined Ovsyannikova and she could face additional charges. Her former employer went on to accuse her of being a British spy. For Ovsyannikova, though, these risks were worth it, because for her, the truth has high stakes.
Надо почитать все источники, и правда, как всегда, будет где-то посередине, потому что сейчас, кроме обычной войны, идет информационная война.